How's it going, everybody? Today we're doing a different type of video that I have never done before up until recently. I usually get right to the point with every video I do, but for these videos I have to mention some things before we really get started. I may put a timestamp down below, but I would listen to this part so that everybody can have a little bit more of an understanding. So I am doing a video telling you guys who I think were some of the best players to play on a video game that I have played on for nearly 8 years. For this particular video, chances are my list is not going to be the same as yours if you played on Xbox CSGO. I wanted to throw in some active players that have stuck it out over the years as well, and also a couple that have played other lesser known game modes, but this list is mainly going to be based off of players in competitive when it was a hell of a lot more lively. There's going to be some people who I've played with, but mainly who I've played against a lot over the years, or a long time ago that some people may not even recognize. This isn't a video I would do because, in my opinion, watching videos like this over the years, ranking players, it brings a lot of toxicity out from other players in the comments section. There's a lot of people that go out of their way to say, oh no, I've played against this guy, he doesn't compare to this other person, or he's shitty at the game, when in reality, 9 times out of 10, people like that are just trying to make themselves look good, or they are just trying to hate on people because they can't back it up in game themselves. This has been the case with this game in particular, with some of the more toxic parts of the community of players. Also, in my opinion, with a video like this, I'm pretty fair. If I don't think somebody in particular should be on a list like this, it's for a damn good reason. I am also going to show some appreciation right here to some of the guys that I played with who I could not put on this list, but I wanted to give them a shout out. It was a lot of fun gaming with them and few others over the years on this game. And just for the record, for a long time, I thought about doing this video and I kept putting it off. There's a reason why I have changed my mind and decided to do this video now, and another video like this I did upload already. And one of the main reasons, I should say, is for Xbox Counter-Strike altogether. There hasn't been enough of a conversation for Xbox CSGO, which I am one of the people that think it is a fun game and an all-time great game, despite it being and looking a little bit outdated. Also, there is no credit that goes to some of the Counter-Strike players in general on console, despite some of them playing it for years and years on console. Those people to me are the true fans of the game, the true players. And I mean that from the standpoint of, we have had to deal with less compared to PC, which is beyond obvious and has been for over a decade. And yet some of us have stuck it out and continued to play because we love the game. CSGO on Xbox, I believe, was updated once back in 2012, shortly after it got released, and it is considered an arcade game, not a full game release. The fact of the matter is, the more we talk about the game on Xbox or console, and especially some of the players on console, I think it slightly increases the chances of a third Counter-Strike game coming to console one day. It may not happen this year or the next or in the next decade. Hell, it might not even happen for longer than that or ever, but it has happened twice before. However slight of a chance that may be to get a third CS game on console, the more we talk about things like this, the better. So that is one of the main reasons I have finally decided to do this video as well. Regardless of that, it's also kind of cool to give credit where credit is due. Some of the players that play Xbox CSGO, in my opinion, are the biggest possible fans of the game, like I said. I can't name one PC player that would enjoy Xbox CSGO enough to play it over the years. There just isn't one player that would go from PC to Xbox CSGO unless they started out on Xbox CSGO first. and there has been few players, including myself, who have played it on both PC and Xbox. But Xbox CSGO is still essentially the original version of CSGO because it hasn't been updated since over a decade ago. For me, I really enjoy that aspect of this version of the game, and always have, along with the ability to rush more without getting immediately beamed like on the PC version. I'm not a big fan of camping or holding angles either. You can rush a hell of a lot more on Xbox CSGO and get away with it. Also, I mentioned in my last video there were 4 oppers I would not even consider throwing in that video because of cheating. On this video, including all 4 of those players, I have a list of 13 players who are ineligible for this particular larger list. Obviously, there were more cheaters than that, but 12 of those were the top ones I could think of that some people would have at least thrown into consideration for a list like this, or put on this list if they did not know that they cheated at the game. By my count, 12 of those 13 guys were very well-known cheaters. At least 1, possibly 2 had a modded console. The rest used a mouse and keyboard or a rapid-fire controller. One of them admitted it after years of playing. The others, it was pretty easy to spot because of spectating and hearing the mouse clicks and keyboard clacking in game chat, or talking about it with other players who used to be friends with some of them. The other one of the 13 that I can think of wasn't a cheater, but I refuse to even consider him because I did not feel he was even good enough to be on a list like this. He was just well known. And regardless of that, most of them had to team stack constantly. The last guy was friends with a lot of the top cheaters on this game, and most of those 13 guys raged harder than 99% of the community when they started to lose. And to me, if you're leaving mid-game, that's not a good player. I think out of everybody I put on this top 20 list, there was 1 person I put on here that leaves mid-game every now and then. And as far as naming those 13 shitters, I'm not even going to do that in this video. They don't deserve to be remembered in this game or even mentioned once. This video is about the best players that didn't have to use cheap bullshit on this game. Like I said in the last video, I wish I didn't even have to bring any of this up. I wish everybody was legitimate, but unfortunately, there's a lot of cheating that goes on in video games. Anyways, here is what I mainly used to determine this list of great players. If you want to pause the video and take a closer look, go ahead. So at number 20, I decided to start things off here with an active player. DCG Big Mac is from the United States and is one of the better active players in the entire game in 2023. Currently, he's top 60 in casual for MVPs. He does team stack a little bit, but he just made the cut for me despite that, largely because he can use most of the weapons on the game better than most of the community ever could. At number 19 from France, I'm putting Vodka right here. He was overall very good at the game. I haven't seen him in a few years, but back in the day when competitive was really active, he was always playing this game and always beating most of the players in the lobbies very consistently on the scoreboard. At number 18, Starly77. He is also from France. This guy is one of the 3 known youngest players on this list. He can put up crazy numbers in full lobbies, but he does rage quit from time to time. He is number 2 in Demolition and number 8 in Casual currently on the MVP leaderboards for those game modes. He used to play competitive as well. In a demo match, he is probably the toughest opponent I've had in Demolition in-game. Nobody else besides maybe one other player that I can think of has ever even made it remotely difficult in Demolition. Even back when people really played that game mode, some players can be good in certain game modes and trash in others. That's why I feel like I have to bring up somebody like him, because he is good at multiple game modes, unlike most other players on any shooter game who only play one game mode. He is also one of the 11 players that have met all of the following objective statistics with at least 5,000 MVPs, 3,000 bombs planted, and 500 bombs defused, all in casual. The only reason he did not make the top 15 on this list is because he quits matches from time to time, like I said, but his all-around weapon skill is crazy for somebody who's probably 15 to 16 years old right now and has been playing this since at least 2015, 2016, when he was about 7 or 8 years old from what other people have told me. If this kid was just a few years older at the time, it would be crazy to think about the potential damage he could have done in some of those lobbies versus all those regular players back then. Because even back when everybody was playing this game, he was still doing better than almost everybody in the lobby back then. And you could hear him occasionally talking in game chat, talking shit to people that were 3 times his age, which I thought was hilarious. So at number 17, Respect 1 or Respect T1. He's from the US and is known for playing competitive years ago. I think he played from about 2012 to about 2017, and then he barely played until about 2018 to 2020. And since 2020, he hasn't played much at all. He most likely racked up somewhere between 22 to 24,000, maybe up to 28,000 MVPs by the end of it in competitive. He got removed a few years ago. I believe he would have had just enough to get into the top 7 or top 8 of all time in competitive if all stats were saved permanently. I know some people might have him a little higher if they had a list like this, but there's 2 reasons why he landed here for me. Number 1, he would use not all but some of the cheap weapons occasionally for no reason. Like nobody would be doing that on the other team in a match, and he would just buy whatever. So the respect factor, he did not completely pass, and I thought at times he was a little bit more inconsistent compared to players around the same skill range higher up on this list. So this is where it balances out for me right here at number 17. So at number 16, Hunt 13K. I decided to place an active player at this spot, but he did get removed from the leaderboards at one point and then started over in competitive. Hunt 13K is from Brazil. He is number 4 actively in competitive with 4,600 MVPs, and he did have a few thousand before when he was removed. But the main reason I am putting him here, he is one of the tougher opponents to play against in a match, especially with a shotgun or an AR in his hands, specifically one of the shotguns that nobody uses with the sawed-off and the Mag 7. He's also pretty good with the SMGs and the Galil, basically the guns that not a whole lot of people use, and I love players that mix up the guns. At number 15, I talked about this guy in my last video, Duck Season. I had him as one of the 4 best oppers on Xbox CSGO. He is from the US and was known for playing competitive a long time ago. He had over 20,000 op kills, but if you want to hear me talk about him a little bit more, go check out that other video because I don't want to reiterate everything that I said about him. But overall, he earned this spot on this list as one of the top oppers. Here at number 14, we've got somebody from north of the border, a fellow NA player from Canada, Make It Happen CPN or Make It Happen Captain. I believe this guy had around 14,000 MVPs in competitive by the time that he stopped playing. His win ratio was pretty good and he was consistent from what I remember. I want to say he was playing from around 2013 based off what others have told me to about 2018. And I haven't seen him around much since then. At number 13, from Brazil, got Desert Eagle. It's worth noting this is a shared account between himself and his son, but the father of this duo was pretty lights out. You could always tell which one of the two was playing, no offense to Junior. But I thought on pistol round in particular, Senior was a top 3 pistol player on Xbox CSGO. Not just with the Deagle, but with the P250 on CT side in particular. This guy has been playing since about 2012 to about 2019. He racked up about 20,000 MVPs in competitive, got removed at one point, came back, racked up another 5,000 or so, got removed again, and then I saw him a few times in casual and haven't seen him much since then. All around, he was a good player and played the objective a lot more than most players ever did. And here at number 12, this is where it starts to get interesting. I decided to put Yuki here. I talked about him in my Opera video. Like I said in that, I'm not sure what country he's from. As some people have said he's from the United States, others have said he's from Sweden. But one thing I didn't mention, I also think this guy was very good on pistol rounds, and especially on CT side, just like with Got Desert Eagle. Both those guys had a similar play style. The difference was Deagle was ahead on leaderboard stats. Ukinium was better at opping and a little harder to face in game. He just didn't play as many rounds as other people. So that's why he gets placed here for me at number 12. At number 11, although I'm still very salty with him for ruining my favorite spot on PUBG, because every time he would stream that game, that motherfucker would land in southern Georgepol at the exact houses that I love to loot. Nicknamed at the time, before they changed that layout recently, that area was called Super 6 for the 6 double-decker houses next to the massive bridge connecting southern and northern Georgia. At number 11, Deadmoo 5. Alright. I'm just trolling, but no, seriously, he did ruin my favorite spot on PUBG. Anyway, no, it's not the real one. It's not the real guy. I'm just trolling you with the pictures. But this is the gamer tag that I am talking about. This guy, whoever he is from the UK. I believe he's been playing this game since it came out to about 2021. He had about 20,000 or so MVPs in competitive and was number 3 for a little while. I've seen him drop in the mid-30s in game consistently, keyword, and 40s a few times, along with a few aces from time to time. He played the objective. He lost some points for the respect factor, though. All around, he was a good player and played the hell out of this game for a long time. And we are in the top 10. And I can't think of any better way to start it off than to put probably the most unknown player on this entire list right here. At number 10, Terry Orange, 359. Terry is from the UK. He had the same consistency and kill ceiling as Deadmoo 5. He might not have the leaderboards going for him because he didn't play nearly as many rounds, but in my opinion, Terry was a little bit harder to face in a match a few years ago. And specifically, he was one of the best AR players in the game that I've seen. So I had to put him right here at number 10, mainly because of that. And now we are in single digits. At number 9, originally from Georgia, now in France, Dotto27. This is a shared account between two brothers. The younger brother is the one that I'm placing here at number 9. This kid and Terry are so similar in almost every way, from the AR skill to facing in game to the headshot accuracy. He also doesn't have the leaderboards going for him, but I think he's earned this spot. He did have a little bit more upside than the two previous players I just mentioned in terms of being in a match playing against him. He was a very tough opponent, especially for someone at his age at the time. I think I could have even placed him a little bit higher on this list, but I had to knock him a little bit for team stacking because I know some people did not appreciate that. So he lands here at number 9 for me. It is worth mentioning that these guys were born in the country of Georgia. Then they moved to Ukraine and lived there for 7 years. Then they moved to Russia and lived there for 9 years. Then they got the hell out of there, racked up some more frequent flyer miles, and now they are residing in France. However, per their request for this video, they decided to only represent the country that they were born in due to past conflicts and still current Russian aggression, which of course I was more than happy to oblige for my fellow Counter-Strike players. At number 8, another opera I mentioned in my last video, Subject Gold 2, who was from the United Kingdom. He had about 17,000 MVPs in competitive before he stopped playing. He played from about 2013 to 2021. He was the second best legitimate opera on Xbox CSGO in my opinion. That's why he snagged the number 8 spot. Moving on to number 7, UCF Knight JB. He's from the United States. He played from 2012 to 2019. I've seen him drop 40 plus a number of times against all players. His kill ceiling was about 50 to 55. In a match, he played smart. That's the simplest way I can put that. He's one of the guys I wish I could have played more with over the years. He was pretty chill, unlike a lot of the other people in this community. I love playing with this guy. He had about 10 to 12,000 MVPs in competitive. It was pretty good at catching other players off guard and knifing people. Overall, he was just a really solid dude and a really solid player to game with. At number 6 from Canada, Effect Abusive. This guy was really good with the ARs and some of the eco guns a number of years ago. Abusive had about 12,000 MVPs in competitive, and more important than stats, he made things difficult when you played against him. He was mainly active between 2012 and 2016 from what others have told me, and was off and on from 2016 to about 2018, and I haven't seen him much since then. I haven't seen him op too often in matches that I did play against him, but overall he was pretty damn good outside of that and every other aspect of the game. Some of the players mentioned on this list have said in the past he was one of the best as well, so I could not go wrong with putting him here at number 6. Starting off the top 5 from the United States, Flusha, the Opper. He went by several different gamer tags in the past, including Seba Ritz, CS Frums, Woodyear, Tank 308, Woody. Those are just some of the names or gamer tags I can remember because he was always changing his gamer tag back then. His current gamer tag is Flusha Mad. I had him listed as the best Opper on Xbox CSGO. That is the main reason why I have him in my top 5 overall players of all time on this game. He did have a 68 win percentage in competitive and about 10,000 MVPs before he got removed from the competitive leaderboard last year in 2022. He played every game mode with me back in the day, and he started playing this in 2015. I will say this, I may have him at number 5, but if I was building a team on console, I would pick him above everybody. Nobody was more consistent at sniping. He would be the first person I would want to have for multiple reasons. One of the biggest outside of opping would be chemistry. I've played more rounds with this guy than any other Counter-Strike player. When we would play together, in the beginning, we didn't always have good chemistry on CS. It actually took a little bit because we had opposite play styles. Also, I think part of that in the beginning was because he actually got me on this game. The story behind that was, I remember about 2 decades ago when I was a kid, I was watching a match on the first Xbox Counter-Strike game being played on the original Xbox. This was like back in 2003, 2004 on live TV. And ever since I saw that match on TV as a kid, I always wanted to play Counter-Strike on console, you know. Graphics on video games were shit compared to now, but back then it looked amazing. So anyways, I walked into a GameStop about 10 years after that looking to get CSGO, and I asked the guy, where can I get a Counter-Strike game on the Xbox 360? And the guy looks at me like I'm crazy, of course, and says it doesn't exist on console. Well, he was wrong, obviously. CSGO was available digitally, just not on disc for the 360. So around that time, I'm talking to Flusha, who up until that time I really only played Call of Duty with, and he says, why don't you give Counter-Strike a try? So he ended up being the reason why I ended up finding CSGO on Xbox altogether. This game, like I said, is just an arcade game technically, so I probably would have never found it back then on the Xbox 360 store because back then that 360 store and the Microsoft store and the PC to download games to your console, that interface was not terrible, but extremely different. It's not like today's Microsoft store or where games are being advertised pretty well either. So, anyway, he's the reason why I found CSGO on Xbox because I never would buy digital games because almost everybody bought the discs back then. So, yeah, GameStop almost costed me any chance of ever playing this game potentially. Anyways, back to this now with Flusha or Woody. I always called him Woody. When we would play this when I first started, obviously he had more game knowledge than me and more than almost everybody else that we were playing with. So, of course, he would call what sites to go to and try and be the strat caller. So, after a while, after I start to get the hang of it all, I start calling things. Of course, that went over real well, as you could imagine, at the start of that. But after some time went by, it worked out pretty well. I mean, when the two of us played together after a while, we didn't lose too many rounds after we got over that hurdle. I'll just put it that way. So I wanted to put him higher on this list, but the main reason I couldn't do it was because I always believe on any shooter game, using an AR, in my opinion, is always going to be more important. And if he heard me say that, he would disagree with me, most likely, because he loved to snipe, especially on this game. But the guys I have at 1, 2, 3, and 4, I believe those four players with the M4 or AK or submachine guns, they just separated themselves from everybody else, in my opinion. Versus with Woody or Flusha on this game, I felt he was above average with the ARs, but not to where these other players were at. And largely because of that lack of use of the ARs, Flush's kill ceiling was about 37 or 40 kills. He was known for getting picks and saving. He wouldn't allow you to get a trade after he killed your teammate. Thus, that was another reason why he didn't get a high number of kills usually. Unless people were dumb enough to continue coming back to key spots that Flusha was already holding good angles on, which happened here and there, especially on Aztec, but he wasn't known for high kill games, like I said. It was about getting the pick, usually the other team's opper, and then saving. And for me, putting everything on a set of scales, this feels right to put him here. You know, this is my opper on my starting five, despite me and him not being on good terms for a while. Regardless, you got to give credit where credit is due. Player wise, he was a beast on this game, especially a few years ago when competitive was really loaded. And number 5 on my all time list for Xbox CSGO players is not too shabby if you ask me. At number 4, another NA player from the US, Mr. Giggy. This guy is the last of the 3 youngest players that I mentioned earlier. He had about 19,000 MVPs in competitive and was number 4 in that category for a long time. He was active until about 2020, 2021. On Xbox CSGO, he was more of an AR player, an entry fragger. And the thing that he brought to the table that I really liked, I think he was the second most aggressive player on this game. He just didn't know how to save, and I consider that to be a good thing. Instead of saving, it didn't matter what the situation was, he would just push everything, and you really don't see that anymore. I love players like that because it's so hard to get away with it on a game where your HP does not recover. He didn't always get away with it, but he was pretty damn good at it. On a side note, and this really has nothing to do with the topic at hand, but out of the players I have in my top 10, him and Abusive are the only 2 guys that I have never talked to or had a conversation with on this game. But Gig is actually friends with some of the people that I used to play PUBG with. We're talking about people that have never even touched Counter-Strike and just random people that I have met on PUBG. I don't know what the chances of that are, but as of 2022, there were 120 million active Xbox Live users. So it's a small fucking world if you ask me. Anyways, I think he was underrated. When I would talk to other players about some of the best people that have ever played Xbox CSGO, only one other person has ever mentioned him besides me. And I don't understand that because he would push first and make other people wonder what the fuck just happened. So at number 3, unstable. Country, Northern Ireland. I've talked about this guy in 1 or 2 Counter-Strike videos before. He is one of the few who has played both Xbox and PC CSGO and has been pretty good at both versions. But it goes without saying he's one of the absolute best players on this version of the game. He's highly against mouse and keyboard on console, just like me, just for the record. His kill ceiling, from what I've seen, is about 60 kills on console. However, I think that number could be a lot higher. And keep in mind, whenever I've said kill ceiling, I'm talking about versus all players and no bot kills for the most part. I feel like I have to mention that again, given the current state of Xbox CSGO now being mostly bot lobbies, compared to how things used to be with full lobbies and competitive all the time back in the day of the non-bot lobby era. Anyways, Unstable can do it all. He can snipe, he loves the scout, he can play every position, but I would say he's more of a refragger, and he would use the ARs better than almost anyone else could, especially a few years ago. Currently, he doesn't play as much. He hardly ever hops on anymore. Despite that, he's number 2 actively in MVPs in competitive with over 13,000. Both he and I are really the only top 2 regulars left on the main leaderboard for competitive. His MVP ratio is also pretty damn good, and he was just under 9,000 bombs planted as well in competitive on that leaderboard. And he's been playing this since about 2012, 2013. He was more active up until I want to say 2018, 2019-ish. And he's been one of the best people to game with on this game. He has always kept things positive and just enjoys playing the game and wants to have fun. And that is definitely a rare quality these days, both in life and especially for gamers, to try and keep things positive. He's one of the best and definitely should be on everybody's list because a few years ago, in particular before he had his kids, when he played this game a hell of a lot more, he was lights out. Number 2. From the United Kingdom, Jungle is massive. This guy could also play any position, but in my opinion, he was mostly a lurker. I'm not a fan of lurkers generally. I think Jungle is the only one I have ever liked, but he has shown flashes and the willingness to play every position and switch from one thing to the next mid-game, which was 100% intentional to keep things as erratic as possible, to keep people guessing. One round he'd bum rush everything, the next 3 you'd never find him until the objective came into play. Most of the time that was how he preferred to play. You just would not find him until it was too late. Jungle was also one of the best on pistol round. When he used the Desert Eagle, I think I told him at one point he didn't need to buy a primary weapon and that he should just go with the Deagle and buy nades, because he was better with the Deagle than any other gun on the game. And he was pretty fucking good with everything else too. Jungle was probably the only player that ever made it extremely difficult out of everybody I have ever played against on this version of the game. Up until, I want to say, I had about 2 years of experience on Xbox CSGO. There was a match where it was Jungle, other well-known regulars, and 2 very well-known cheaters on his team, in a 5v5 versus me, Flusha, and one buddy of ours at the time. A keyboard guy on Jungle's team had 22 kills, the other had 17 or 18. Flusha had a decent game and had 25. Jungle dropped 35 and he was killing us the entire game. I had 42 in this match, and me and Flusha won. That was a match where none of us had their best game, but That was because we all kept taking each other out. You know, that match with who exactly was on each team, I always felt like that was the best single match ever played on Xbox CSGO. Just going back and forth for 30 rounds, and we squeezed out a win 16 to 14 against him. With all those guys playing against us, it felt fucking amazing to beat all of them at once. They had a few cheaters plus jungle on their team, and we found a way to get it done back then when it felt like a 2v5 for us the whole game. I mean, I've seen jungle drop 70 plus kills before versus all players, and he was on controller. Very few could do something like that legitimately, and on controller especially, versus all players. And he held the number 3 spot for nearly a decade on Xbox CSGO in competitive MVPs. He played from 2012 to about 2019 or 2020. I tried reaching out to him a while ago, but I don't think he games on Xbox anymore. I will say, for comparison purposes, Unstable would have beat Jungle on PC CSGO damn near every time, at least when we all played a few years ago, because Jungle couldn't use a mouse to save his life when he played on PC, and those words come straight from himself. But Unstable, even in his prime on controller, would have come up short most of the time on Xbox CSGO versus Jungle. That's just my opinion, but those are two of the guys that I have seen and played with, played against, and spectated more than almost everybody else in the past on this game besides Flusha. And Jungle just separated himself from almost all the other competition from my point of view. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but I can't really have a number one for this video because I don't think that would be fair. As for me, I'm on this list somewhere. I'll just say my part of it, and then you guys can decide if you played on Xbox CSGO enough. Everybody has their own opinion. Like I said, this is my video, but I kind of hate having to be the one talking about myself. But something has to be said, just like I've tried to share my point of view about everyone else on this list. And there's a big difference between a random ass player that's gonna say some bullshit in the comments eventually and a guy like me. Jungle, for the first couple of years when I first started playing, he was really the only individual player I had to be aware of whenever I would hop into a match and he would be in there. I really had to pay attention to everything during the game. And over time, I started to do better than Jungle. There are 3 or 4 total video games that I have played where I just feel as if I'm not going to have a problem going through people. And this is definitely one of them. Anybody can have one good match at any given time, but long term, the only time I lost 2 in a row was when people team stacked the fuck out of the lobby, or a group of cheaters sticking together on this game were in the lobby. Even then, I've had some great wins where it has been a 1v5 or 1v4 or 2v5 for the majority of entire matches. Jungle could probably say the same, but leaderboard wise, there is nobody else that came close to that. With 3 of the 4 major game modes and nearly every statistic available, most of my stats have never even really mattered to me outside of the winning ones or playing the objective. And I started a hell of a lot later than most people did on this version of the game. I believe I started in May of 2016 on this game on Xbox. Even in casual, I hardly played casual up until about a year ago in late 2022. My stats have been removed in that game mode a few times for inactivity. It took me less than 2 months to reach that top 100 mark after I started over again. And now I'm in the top 40 for MVPs in that game mode when most of the people still high up on that board have been playing it since it came out in 2012 and have a full decade on me in that game mode. And even though I personally think most leaderboards are somewhat pointless, but for a conversation like this, you have to go off of something because not everybody can be in this type of conversation. And instead of talking about, oh, I had a 10.0 KD or whatever, when I was playing this game all the time and really only played this game when I managed to get away from studying in college a couple years ago, I'd rather tell you that my win percentages were the highest in all game modes before the bot lobby era really started. And I didn't know how to save, just like with Gig. I like being the entry fragger, and over time I shifted towards strat. I loved rushing with the MP9 on this game when the M4 was just too much and I had to eco. My kill ceiling versus players, I've dropped 85 kills before, and in-game versus bots I've dropped about 120. Obviously, with a controller, it's unfortunate that a portion of the hours I've put in were on the Xbox 360 because there was so many good games I wish I would have had recorded back then. I've still posted about 80 Xbox CSGO videos up until now. Had I been on the Xbox One a little bit sooner, that number would have been a lot bigger. I'm hoping to do about 100 total Xbox CSGO videos before it's all said and done with this game. I'll link the playlist if you guys want to see some of what I've been talking about. So that's all of my take. You guys decide where to put me. I just think it's fair to say what needed to be said. And at the end of the day, there's such a small amount of content on this version of the game to begin with. And it's essentially the original version of CSGO, frozen in time. And almost nobody knows about that. I mean, I feel the nostalgia every time I load up this game still. And that's why I still love playing it. But I've put a lot of time into this game. I know who most of the cheaters are and who the legit ones are. The people on my list here deserved a spot in this video, and without somebody saying something, you guys wouldn't know a whole lot about some of these great players from the past or Xbox CSGO in general, because hardly anybody posted videos on it back in the day or even talked about these players who are some of the true fans of the game, in my opinion. And had I taken the active factor out of the equation and just chose the best of the best for the competitive game mode, maybe 2 or 3 of the names are different, but I like the factors I chose for this video and for this list. Anyways, that's my top 20 players for Xbox CSGO. My top 10 was for all time on here, and I didn't see anybody else above my top 12, as they were all really solid at the game. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Xbox CSGO is pretty much dead in the water now, but the players that made this game fun in the past, the true fans of this game who put in some good hours and played for a minimum of 5 years on this version of the game, and the few who have stuck it out over the years, deserved some recognition, and that's a big part of the reason why I pulled the trigger on doing this video as well. Because it's the players that make multiplayer games good, bad, or great at the end of it. So, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.